My time with Payday 2 videos as of late consists of a quadruple marathon. Ravaging the crime spree mode as a makeshift Pokemon trainer, flexing my throwing arms with all sorts of implements, channeling the spirit of this summer's Olympic Games, and even cosplaying as one of the most prolific slasher villains in cinema history. After those colossal undertakings, I wanted to take things down a notch in preparation for other challenges of this ilk in the future. And it's a simple fact for most people that understand Payday lore on a basic level that the Payday gang have stolen pretty much all there is to steal. From money, to diamonds, to weapons, and even nuclear warheads. But one thing they haven't really stolen, at least as far as a heist goes, is someone's identity. Bane notwithstanding. But there's always a way to change that. So today I answer the question, can you beat Payday 2's Assassination heists as an identity thief? The plan on paper is simple. I'll need to complete the 7 assassination-based heists in the game in order to complete the challenge, done in order of their release. These are Hotline Miami, Hoxton Revenge, The Biker Heist, Scarface Mansion, Bullock's Mansion, Mountain Master, and Crude Awakening, all of which shall be done on the Death Wish difficulty. Keen-eyed viewers will know that this is identical to the hit list of Mementos targets in the Joker crime spree run. As for more specific rules, after clearing each heist, I have to assume the identity of the boss for that heist and use the weapons and armor that they use, or at least close enough proxies to them. So, once I complete Hotline Miami, I have to assume the identity of the Commissar for Hoxton Revenge, then Hector for the Biker Heist, and so on and so forth. For loud heists, I'll be going alone, but I will allow crew AI for any stealth runs I decide to do. Finally, the only mods we'll be using that are relevant to the run are the No Weapon mod and Vanilla Hood Plus in standard gameplay, as well as the Taylor mod pack for the Fashion Souls portion of the run. And that's basically it. Anyway, with that taken care of, let's do this. Since I'm starting off the run as, well, myself, this challenge doesn't start off as a weapon-restricted run. This means I can kit up pretty much however I want to. There are many ways I could go about this, but I ultimately decided to go with a hacker setup with a gold Amarok and the saw to pop some heads with greys. Ammo and the lack of crits may become an issue, but we shall see. Considering how Hotline Miami can be for certain setups, things started off fairly decently on the balance of things. Aside from my saw coming up against the strongest wooden boards in Florida, as the thing just couldn't cut through them at all. You'd think that they'd market this stuff en masse, but whatever. The saw was much more capable when it came to igniting the gas cans, and the fact that I had access to a sniper rifle right off the bat meant that snipers weren't a big issue. After dealing with a pretty scary situation involving me being chased by the most persistent skulldozer I've ever laid witness to, I finished with the cars and blasted the gas station. Inside the basement, I had just enough in the saw to cut my way through the first gate, meaning I needed a drill for the gate holding the crowbar. Outside of that and having to ration my Amarok ammo though, it wasn't all that hard, getting the Commissar's address and taking out one last sniper on the way to the DeLorean. With the saw in hand on day 2, I could quickly race my way through the apartment building and make it up to the apartment in less than 2 minutes. Needing feigned death for the first time, I made use of the pocket ECM to help thin out the dozer horde, though I was running low on ammo by the time I got the thermal drill up and running. The tight halls of the apartment were perfect Grey's playgrounds, which is good as I need as many multi-kills as possible to help with my ammo economy. Though I did need to go to my ammo bag asset, which is just as well as I had to deal with a skulldozer and a minigun dozer in sequence when I went back up there. After another close call with feigned death, I thinned out the death squads around me before taking my first identity as I downed the Commissar in 4 shots of the Amarok. With that, I could clear out of the apartment and get ready to assume the visage of the Commissar in preparation for Hoxton Revenge. Given that the Commissar only has one weapon in his repertoire, that being the KSP light machine gun, this Sicario build is going to be mostly spec'd into body expertise to get the most out of its damage. I obviously tried my best to make myself look like the Commissar, but if anything, I just made Hoxton here look more like Mr. Snrub. Given my high detection risk and lack of silenced weapon, there was no point keeping this one quiet as I quickly got a Joker on my side and found the panic room in the basement. Dealing with a pair of bulldozers and a lack of first aid kit speed could have messed me up early on, but 2 separate feigned deaths helped prevent an early failure. Thankfully, once the drill was up, I could just focus on holding the basement. And unlike the Amarok, the KSP doesn't have a net negative on ammo, so I could afford to be a bit more generous with my ammo distribution. Once the holdout was done, it was time for the fight with Hector. Well, fight is a very strong word here. I don't know if it's the staggering effects or if another skill was causing him to struggle, but either way, he didn't seem to land a single hit on me as I turned him into Swiss cheese. All that left was gathering some Payday gang evidence, and since Bile put himself in a fairly accessible place, getting this done was just a matter of time and patience. Next up is having to do the biker heist as Hector. This one is not going to be easy no matter how I look at it, but unlike the Commissar, I do have one upside to being the original Payday 2 rat. I have access to 2 weapons rather than just one. His main weapon upon going loud is the ISMA 12-gauge shotgun, but if he's alerted without his armor, he instead uses the Shimano 88. So, yeah, obviously not the greatest pairing ever, but it at least gives me options. The only downside is that I have to spec into Iron Man Heist for the ICTV in this one, meaning that I'm spread a little thinner than I would have liked on this one, but I'm just going to have to find a way to make it work. As you'd expect, when Mike hauls his truck up next to the warehouse, the SWAT turret was the biggest obstacle, as well as having to deal with skulldozers as it turns out. In spite of everything, I did make it all the way to the completion of the bike, but given that I was being hauled up by snipers and everything else around me, I barely made it a few feet before Feigned Death finally stopped cooperating with me. But the second attempt doing this actually went really well, in spite of me being forced to the workshop in line of sight of the Skulldozer and SWAT turrets. First, the truck was on the far end of the lot, which is always easier to deal with. Second, the first part I needed to get was the seat, which is easier to do without snipers bearing down on me, and it gave me some ammo deposits to make use of. This was balanced out by having to deal with the special parts objective, but I could manage to hold out once I was in there. At that point, all I had to do was get rid of the remaining snipers overlooking the escape route. Then I could get on the bike and escape. A little rougher than usual, but I got there. On day 2, it actually took a lot of firepower to bring the biker boss down, but a rogue bulldozer with an ISMA of his own brought me down on the way back. The second try evaporated in less than a minute owing to a minigun dozer, before a green bulldozer and a skulldozer completed the quartet 2 minutes into attempt number 3. After that, I finally managed to bring the biker boss down for real and get my hands on the BCI helmet before juking the incoming skulldozer. After that, it was a quick and simple romp through the train, where I briefly got sidetracked at the end when I saw what I believe was the ghost of me inside the helicopter. Spooked by that sight, I wasted no time getting out of there. Now it's time to cosplay as the biker boss, and with it, a return to the KSP only run. With another ICTV run needed here, we needed to essentially combine the Hector and Commissar builds for this one to make use of the ICTV. Although this time around I decided to go with a biker perk deck. It just seemed right with the build. In spite of the frailties of the perk deck and the lack of secondary weapon, I at least had practice by mimicking the Commissar for using this thing. It was at least potent enough that I could actually make it all the way to the man himself on the first attempt and brought him and his security down. But I eventually ended up being brought down myself during a lengthy reload. 2 messy attempts later, and I was beginning to wonder just why this build felt so fragile despite getting so far on the first attempt. And it was after attempt number 3 that I found out the answer. I never equipped the damn ICTV. One failed attempt to a pair of tasers later, I managed to romp my way through all of the tasks and put Sosa down once again. But panic started to kick in upon seeing a pair of minigun dozers slowly make their way towards me. And my desire to bring them down instead of just grabbing the bags and making a run for it cost me. With desires of revenge coursing through me, I went at it one more time, blasting through anyone in my way with biker-infused rage, burning the paintings, dunking the cars into the sea, and finally making my way through Sosa's enormous health reserves one last time. With the van on the far end of the lot, this was where the biggest part of the challenge was. Fighting a constant battle to stop them from being taken too far, while simultaneously trying to purge the snipers watching my escape path. I even got inconvenienced when this elite SWAT launched this bag of yayo 50 feet into the air for no reason. After dealing with the last sniper I needed and regrouping my stolen drugs, I could finally move them down the driveway with no slices of healing remaining. But I could finally put Scarface Mansion behind me as I prepped myself to play dress up as Ernesto Sosa. My Sosa cosplay is a little lacking, but at least this time I could experiment with a new build. In this case, a Ballistic Vest Kingpin build. Not only that, but this build could use 2 weapons again. In this case, the Little Friend 7.62 and the Bronco 44 revolver, for his loud and stealth weapons respectively. This build once again leans on body expertise aced, though fully loaded would have been a good idea for this one, given that my Bronco doesn't need that much in terms of skills. Not that I'd ever know when it comes to the first go around at raiding Bullock's mansion as Ernesto Sosa, as I barely made it 2.5 minutes through the heist before the game decided that it didn't want to agree with me anymore. On the proper first attempt, I could at least get to grips with this build, effectively having 3 weapons in the assault rifle, grenade launcher, and revolver. It also went without saying that the ammo economy of the Little Friend meant that I had to lean on the revolver a lot more often than not. I did manage to make it into the inner sanctum, but the sheer power of the Federales in here brought me down. The second run was a lot slower in pace, but at least I could breach into Bullock's secret funtime room and released his shark from custody. From there, I made my way through Bullock's door, probably confusing him by being met by Ernesto Sosa instead of the Payday gang, while I made him say hello to my little friend. Once the server was in my possession, I did feel pressure inside the garage while destroying the turret van, but Feigned Death saved my skin and allowed me to regroup. When I got out through the front gates once again, I had to hold out carefully until the van arrived, after which I wasted no time getting out of there. It's now time to become the most pathetic boss in Payday 2, and it's going to involve the M13 9mm, which will actually get to fire, although we're putting a suppressor on it to perform a stealth run of Mountain Master. Simply put, Yufu Wong is someone who is actually competent and terrifying, and Bullock is just good at empty threats and being a walking plot device, if he could even be called that. If it came to a loud confrontation between the two, Yufu Wong would probably fold Bullock hard enough that he could fit him into a suitcase. As such, taking him out in stealth like a coward with the burglar build sounded like the ideal Bullock solution. Things got off to a smooth enough start on attempt number 1, getting all the way up to the top end of the building and getting the code for the gate, before somehow having the game think that I wanted to place a drill down on the damn thing. Miraculously, nobody thought to check the area, but likewise, I never thought to close the bookshelf after the fact, which eventually came back to bite me when I set off the fire alarm to send Yufu up to the roof. From there, things just started to unravel as I committed to 3 sloppy runs in a row. This one failure here hurt the most though, not being able to bring down this triad member fast enough before he could get a shot off. My psyche was admittedly breaking around this point owing to just how much failure was coming in, but on attempt number 7, I finally got the run I needed, making my way back up to the top of Biff's tower once again, thinning out the security and getting rid of the camera operator in the process. It's nice to actually be able to press the buttons on the keypad for once. Making sure to shut the bookcase this time, I decrypted the hard drive and triggered the fire alarm to send Yufu Wong up to the roof. Here, I got jump scared by a rogue triad before being able to one-shot Wong from the shadows, just like the back pocket snake that Bullock is. After that, I set up the zip line to get rid of the body bags before using Yufu Wong's keycard to secure some of his gold. Should have figured that the most pathetic boss in Payday 2 would have given me the most troubles in this mini-run, but at least we're on the home straight. The good thing about all this is that we can finish on a high note as we can cosplay as the Mountain Master himself, with the general outfit in red and white being the closest match to his armor I can find. I would have loved to have his actual armor for this one, but I guess the Payday 2 modding community hasn't done anything like that yet. Either way, it was time to create one final build, using the ICTV one last time and using body expertise just in case the flamethrower actually makes use of it. In this case, I'll be using the MA-17 flamethrower as the weapon of choice. Interestingly, we do have a second weapon of sorts, as we have access to Molotovs for this one mission. Not that I'm sure to find many uses for them, but every little helps. Despite the changes to the fire mechanics in this game over time, the flamethrower was actually still pretty good as far as potency goes, with one small puff still enough to lay hefty damage out. Granted, dozers could still do me a frighten, but I could just leave them be. With this crowd-covering weapon, even working my way through the pipe puzzle and defense of the pump wasn't much of a hassle in the long run, despite snipers spawning in. Getting through the pumping in just over 10 minutes, it was now time to deal with Gabriel Santiago. Now, I know it's probably the oil pits in his arena that are nailing on the big damage, but even still, I was surprised at how potent the flamethrower was against him, with only 2 bursts needed to bring the deep down. Setting up the rig for the climactic finish wasn't a hassle, but it still wasn't a success. Don't get me wrong, it was an incredibly close one as I was one turn away from safety, but the multitude of skulldozers meant that I was eventually cut down before I could get there. Cut down agonizingly close to victory. But, as it turned out, the culprit was something I didn't even consider. I still had the burglar perk deck on. Honestly, it's kinda surprising that the Yufu Wong build made even burglar seem good and loud. Once I switched it up for muscle, it was time for one more attempt. It actually started out as a strange 75 detection stealth run at first. I even got the good oil sample and set up the oil transfer before slowly but surely making my way to the oil tanks. Though this was where I got caught out. No matter, I had fire at my back, and I was not afraid to use it. The pump defense task was once again as routine as it should be, though towards the end I was a little perturbed at seeing a pair of minigun dozers lumbering towards me on the upper walkways. Thankfully, Keegan was willing to let me go from the area before they could become a major issue. Now it was time for the final match with Gabriel Santiago, and much like the thirst round with the man, the flamethrower proved incredibly effective at dealing damage to him. I guess it makes sense. Locke does mention that the suit is weak to fire after all. One more burst of flame later and Gabriel is boiled alive, leaving the drilling process as the last thing to do once again. Once into the escape, I let nothing stand in my way as all non-skulldozer obstacles were met with a plume of fire. Unlike the previous run, I could actually avoid the skulldozer bombardments and make it to the zip line, which effectively wins me the challenge. Using a molly on the Marshall sniper camping out behind some boxes, I quickly got back to the boat and got out to safety as the cops couldn't do a damn thing to stop me. With that, I watched the Serra oil rig go up in flames, finishing the heist and proving that yes, you can indeed beat Payday 2's Assassination heists as an identity thief. Not a whole lot to say in the end, it was just a very fun and exciting mini-challenge. It was interesting to have to play in a similar vein to how these boss fights and Bullock would usually play out. There are even a couple that could even be their own full-length challenge runs, but that's another matter entirely. Next Payday 2 challenge will be another full career mode run that should be out by Christmas, and you might have an idea on what that will involve. But that's that for this video, so throw us a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and feel free to leave any suggestions for future challenge runs in the comments below. I'm always open to ideas, and what you suggest to me could end up being a future video. But until that point comes along, I'll see you on whatever I do next. Take care now.